Shalom everyone. Today I want to talk about the creation of humans. In the previous video I talked about the creation of the world and that it was God who created the world and everything in it. After God created all the non-human world, we are told that on the sixth day God created human beings. In this video I want to talk about the creation of humans, focusing on the question of what was God's purpose of creating humans. I believe this is very important because understanding this will go a long way towards making sense of the Bible and its message. I also believe that when we rightly understand the original purpose for which we were created, we'll be able to correctly think about our ultimate destination and correctly visualize our ultimate future. Therefore, I consider today's talk to be of immense importance. Okay, then let us start by reading some few verses from Genesis 1. And God said, "Let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth." So God created humankind in His image. In the image of God He created them. Male and female He created them. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth." Genesis 1:26-28. Now there is something that we need to be aware of while trying to figure out the purpose of creating humans. And that is, in the ancient world, as John Walton says, existence is understood in terms of function, functional ontology. What that means is that they take something to exist only if that something has a function. If something has no role or no function, it does not exist. When we look at Genesis creation account, we find that on the second day, God created the dome or the firmament in the midst of the waters. But for what purpose? So that it will create a space for the living creatures by separating the waters into two parts, above the firmament and below the firmament. And they believe that the firmament is, or the dome is, holding the waters that are above, from falling down to the earth. And only when God opens the doors or the windows of the firmament, then the waters will come down as rain. We also find that God created the sun and the moon, the two great lights, the Bible says, the greater light and the lesser light, for the purpose of separating the day from the night, and also to have seasons and days and years, and also to be lights in the sky, and also to give light to the earth. Now, when we come to the creation of humans, the Bible didn't just say that humans were created, but that they were created in the image of God. And then God said, "And let them have dominion." Now, what is the connection between the image of God, or created in the image of God, and having dominion or rule? For J. Richard Middleton, the creation of the firmament and the two great lights are tied to their purpose in such a way that their existence cannot be separated from the purpose for which they were created. So looking at that and now considering the connection between humans created in the image of God and the dominion that they were given, he says that dominion or rule is the necessary and inseparable purpose, and hence virtually constitutive of the image. David J.A. Kleins also said that rule is the permanent implication of the image. So from here we can say that to say that humans were created in the image of God implies that they were created to rule. Or in other words, humans were created in the image of God to rule or to have dominion. I think Psalm number 8 also confirms this. We can look at it. Let us read verses 3-8. "When I look at your heavens, the works of your fingers, the moon and the stars that you have established, What are human beings that you are mindful of them? Mortals that you care for them? Yet you have made them a little lower than God and crowned them with glory and honor. You have given them dominion over the works of your hands. You have put all things under their feet, all sheep and oxen, and also the beasts of the field, the birds of the air, and the fish of the sea, whatever passes along the paths of the sea. Psalm number 8, verses 3 to 8. Okay, so humans were created to rule. But the question is, to rule what? Fellow humans? Should humans rule each other depending on their strength, wealth, class, gender, race, etc., etc.? No, not fellow humans. We should be very clear that when God authorized humans to rule, fellow humans of any type, gender, or class are not included. It was only non-human world or non-human creation of God. Okay, we are not supposed to rule over other fellow human beings, but to rule over non-human world. Okay, fine. But does that mean that since the non-human world does not have a conscience like us, we can go ahead and rule in whatever way we want to and do whatever that we want to do? There are some people who accuse Christians that because of this belief, Christians are destroying the creation of God. Well, that may be true to some extent, but that is not what we should be doing. We should not forget that, okay, we were created to rule, but first we were created in the image of God. What that means is that we are to rule as God's image bearers. Again, we can ask, then what does it mean for us to rule as God's image bearers? It means to rule with love, faithfulness, justice, and wisdom. This is very important. See, we are God's representatives. We represent God to the world. That means we should live and act as God would live and act. And we should rule as God would rule. In other words, we are to mirror God to the world. We are to reflect God to the rest of the creation. In the words of Victor P. Hamilton, man is created to rule, but this rule is to be compassionate and not exploitative. Even in the Garden of Eden, he who would be Lord of all must be servant of all. This is so true, but sadly so neglected. Sibley Toner also says, the message of the sages to us is this: if you are going to reign on God's behalf in the world as God's chief ministers, then for pity's sake, do it the way God would do it. Display the image of God in you. Do it with wonder and pleasure and tenderness. Do it with respect for the creatures and their individual competencies. Do it aware that if they cease to exist, we too are impoverished, and maybe even we cease to exist. So to rule as God's image bearers is to rule God's world with love and wisdom that comes from God alone. Again, let me tell you what N.T. Wright says regarding this in his book, The Day the Revolution Began. He says that God made us not just stewards of His world, but He intended for us to be worshipping stewards of His heaven and earth reality. And there are two aspects of the function of human beings. One is the royal aspect, and the other is the priestly aspect. And we can see these two aspects very clearly in one of the very popular verses of the Bible, that is 1 Peter chapter 2 verse 9, where it says, "But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a royal priesthood." This priestly as well as the royal aspect of the function of human beings is mentioned in other books of the Bible as well. The priestly function is to bring the praises of all the creation before God, which is from the creation toward God. And the royal aspect or the royal function is to reflect God's justice and wisdom to the world, which is from God toward the creation. And we human beings are to stand between God and His creation, reflecting God to the world and then bringing praises of the creation back to God. For me, this understanding of N.T. Wright is so profound. And to think of myself and my relationship with God and the world in this way truly makes sense. See, this is the thing. What God intended by creating human beings is that they reflect God's wisdom, justice, love, all these attributes of God to the rest of the creation in the world, so that the earth will be filled with the glory of God. Prophet Habakkuk says, "But the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea." To fill the earth with the knowledge of the glory of God has always been God's plan from the very beginning. And He created humans with the purpose of fulfilling that plan by ruling over it with love, justice, and wisdom as His image bearers. You can also see the picture of God's vision for the world in Psalm number 148, where the whole creation is praising God and bringing glory to Him. That is what we humans are supposed to accomplish for God in this world. One last thing that I want to say. In the Mesopotamian context, only kings were considered as the image of God. Kings were the representatives of God on earth in power and authority. But in the Bible, not just kings, not only kings, but every human being is God's representative. Every human being is given the royal priestly identity, which was exclusively for few elites in other cultures. This is a revolutionary idea, isn't it? And one that is meant to implicitly break down the hierarchical structures in the society. Jordan Peterson, a clinical psychologist, writes in his book 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote for Chaos, that there are many problems with Christianity, like not giving importance to the material world and focusing too much on the spiritual world and the next life, among others. But he says that that does not make Christianity a failure, because he says there are many good things that Christianity has accomplished, even those things that seem impossible. One of them is putting the slaves and masters, common people and noblemen on the same level, making them equal before God and law. Yes, Christianity is truly countercultural and counterintuitive in many ways, even though the question of whether Christians are truly embodying that message of Christianity is another matter. Let me end my talk with the words of Jesus Christ as recorded in Matthew chapter 20, verses 25 to 27. But Jesus called them to Him and said, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them. It shall not be so among you. It shall not be so among you." Then how is it to be? "But whoever would be great among you must be your servant, and whoever would be first among you must be your slave. Even as the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and to give His life as a ransom for many." This is the way of God from the very beginning, and we are to reflect His way to the world. Thank you so much for listening. In my next video, I will try to look at what it means when the Bible says that God rested on the seventh day. I hope to see you there again. And until then, take care and God bless you.